Hello everybody, my name is Simon Powers and this is Classical Guitar Corner. In these fireside chats, I often give updates to the members of CGC Academy, play some demonstrations of what's coming up in the curriculum, and talk on a couple of different topics. This week we have Gtoberfest at CGC Academy. Gtoberfest is our online festival that runs for 2 days at the end of October, and you can thank Colin Davin, a really wonderful guitarist, a good friend, and used to be a bandmate of mine. You can thank Colin for that name, Gtoberfest, because we were noodling around with a name for something and it just kind of stuck, Gtoberfest. Always spelt incorrectly. Everyone always refers to it, obviously, as Oktoberfest, but it's Gtoberfest. In any case, that's going to be this weekend. We'll have Sanya Plohel, Nicoletta Todesco, Dave Belcher, Jane Curry, myself, James Erickson. So the whole CGC team presenting performances, lectures, and workshops. And also our special guest this year is Vincent Lindsay Clark, wonderful performer and composer who'll be giving a workshop on composition and then a masterclass to 2 lucky students who have composed pieces that they will get feedback on. Something that we don't touch on too much at CGC, composition, but wonderful to bring in a master composer and educator and performer to help us explore that world. It's going to be great. Sanya and Nikki are both going to be delving into technique workshops, so a wonderful chance to hear from really accomplished musicians how they approach the guitar. Maybe it will help you structure your next technique session for your practice. I will be giving a presentation on non-chordal tones, which sounds very, very technical and analytic, but in fact, it's searching for moments of expressivity in playing. We have phrasing, which is perhaps more broadly or more widely known as an expressive part of what we do. But then non-chordal tones, things like suspensions or appoggiaturas, how they guide the music, how you can make the most out of them, how they can be expressive. So that's my presentation. And then Jane Curry will be giving a presentation. We just had a call just before going over the different topics. A really wonderful discussion. And I might talk about a couple of points here, but she's going to be talking about some exercises for hands because she's gone through a huge amount of research and experience on her end about maintaining movement and flexibility in the hands in the midst of adversity, which I know many members of CGC have various challenges, so it'll be really great for you. And also some topics, that come up in coaching calls that really are worth talking about at length. So we've got legato playing, which is so integral to what we do on the guitar. There's mistakes. What does that mean? And it sounds simple, but there's actually a lot to unpack there. And then also the world of creativity in what we do. As guitarists, we are so burdened sometimes with rules and instructions. Just on the page, there's dynamics, right-hand fingerings, left-hand fingerings, there's rhythms and pitches. And as a teacher, you often get asked, is this okay? Is this correct? Am I doing it right? And while that's all necessary to a certain degree, it can unfortunately squash creativity, that creativity we all have, and most of us explored more in our youth, our very youth, which maybe like when we were tiny and full of imagination, playing with imaginary friends, coming up with games, that kind of imagination. So re-engaging with that is something I often encourage in coaching calls. Sometimes might be through story or just approaching music in a slightly different way. Sometimes unlocking that creativity that was present when you first fell in love with music and the classical guitar. Often it's going to be about sound and the intimate nature of our instrument. I'm going to talk about that just as a topic, virtuosity. And I'll play you a little exercise/study from the upcoming Cornerstone Grade 3, which is coming out in the Academy. Excuse me. I've been talking too much today. It's coming out January 1st. Not this study, the whole curriculum. There's 30 lessons. So it was interesting whenever you come across a study to think, what is that studying? And this one is fixed fingers, where you have one finger that's fixed and the other one is performing slurs. So it's one thing to practice slurs in isolation. It's another to do them while a finger is fixed, which is often what happens in repertoire. We have to hold a melodic note down and then might be other slurs. A short little study, but hopefully a nice one. Now, the topic of virtuosity came into my mind as I saw a completely virtuosic performance just last week. This performer, had such technical prowess that he played pieces that I know from playing through them are so technically difficult and so put so many hurdles in your way. Sorry. I should really pause this and take a drink of water, but I'm going to power through. Normally you would think there'd be big technical barriers that slow you down, and anyway, he breezed through them like they weren't there. It was like it was easy, and that's always pretty miraculous, especially if you are a practitioner yourself. If you play classical guitar and you see someone do something technically amazing, it's always very impressive because you can appreciate how difficult that is. Just like with tennis or soccer or any pursuit where you can reach mastery, if you're involved in that, if you have an interest or you actively participate, that allows you to appreciate really high-level practitioners, high-level artistry in any of those pursuits. But it does make me think, a lot of the members at CGC, we might be in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. There probably might be a couple people in the 90s, actually. One part is, if I can't reach that level of virtuosity, what's the point? If I only have limited time or my body is pushing back, saying, no, we're not going to get any faster, we're just in fact going to get slower as we get older, or my memory is just not going to get stronger, it's going to get weaker, etc., etc. We have these challenges that mount. What's the point? What's the point if we're never going to reach that level? Well, honestly, hardly anyone will ever reach that level, myself included. So why then? Why are we doing what we do? Well, there's so many reasons. And I think, keeping on the theme of virtuosity, not getting too philosophical about it, virtuosity, the root of it comes from virtue. And I'm sure there's a Latin root in there, so maybe someone can share that with me. But it's technical prowess is not the only virtue on the classical guitar. And I would argue that it's perhaps not even the most important one. Technique allows us to express ourselves freely without, if we have technique in our way, that can limit our expressivity. If we have an idea that we want to get across with music, technique can help or hinder that. But we also can be virtuosic in the way that we create time and space, for lack of a better term. Our timing, our tempo choices, our poise in music. Something can be simple but dramatic with dynamics, with tone quality, vibrato. And it's probably these qualities that interested you in the classical guitar in the first place. And so I think sometimes it's really great to re-engage with other virtuosic elements like tone, like sensitivity, like even things outside of the musical realm, meta-musical. Is that the right term? Yes, extra musical. Things like how you present in a performance. Many of us, perhaps outside of classical guitar or outside of the classical realm in general, might have been to a performance where the performer is just so charismatic, funny, entertaining, that is almost the most important part of the performance. And that is a virtue, and someone can be virtuosic at that. And so many of these elements, you will have some of them that you can be virtuosic at, some of them you can really hone and master. And I invite you to try and think, like, what are my strengths? What can I master as part of my musical experience? What are my virtues that I can develop? It might be tone quality. I mean, almost everybody, I would argue, has the ability to create a beautiful tone. Even if it's just one note. If you can create one beautiful sound, you can create many. The challenge is to keep it consistent and also to be in control of that sound. But if the music remains simple enough, and we don't get burdened with too much complexity in the music, then we're free to be virtuosic with our tone, timing, sensitivity, pauses. All of those elements can be virtuosic and very, very expressive. You know, someone in a Q&A, I ran a Q&A this week, and someone asked, what do you do before a performance in terms of a warm-up? And I did say that I do my 5-minute warm-up that I have out there. But honestly, now that I come to think about it, what I've often done before performances is I will improvise. I will purposefully stop practicing anything difficult or complex and reconnect with that sound quality that I love. Just trying to create 1 or 2 beautiful notes. And it recenters my attention on these virtues of sound, poise, time and space, expressive qualities, dynamics. And there's no rules here because I'm improvising. There's no fingerings that are correct. There's no memory slips to be had. And I love being in that space. And I reconnect with that before I perform because it allows me and reminds me of what I actually love in music and how easy that can be to bring onto stage. So with that, I say hello and goodbye, and I will see many of you at Gtoberfest, which is free for all members of the Academy, so please do come along. It runs all day Saturday and Sunday, and it's going to be a great time. All right, take care, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye.